Ridged.
Ridged.
Ridicule.
Ridged.
Ridged.
The ridged sand of the river bottom.
Ridicule.
Ridicule.
The ridicule of his peers. The government's proposals were held up to ridicule by opposition ministers.
He had become an object of ridicule among the other teachers. At the time, his ideas were ridiculed.
Ridiculous.
Ridiculous.
That's a ridiculous idea.
Don't be ridiculous.
I'd look ridiculous in a dress like that. It's an absolutely ridiculous decision.
It's ridiculous that we have to wait 6 weeks.
A ridiculously expensive jacket.
Ridiculously low prices.
Riding.
Riding.
Horse riding.
Shall we go riding on Saturday?
Rife.
Rife.
Violent crime is rife in our inner cities.
The crowded factories are rife with disease. No one knew exactly what he had done, but speculation ran rife.
Riff.
Riff.
A guitar riff.
He was riffing on his guitar. During her show, she riffs about everything from her family to global warming.
Riffle.
Riffle.
He rifled through the papers on his desk.
Riff-raff.
Riff-raff.
We charge high prices to keep the riff-raff out.
Rifle.
Rifle.
Sally rifled through her wardrobe, looking for a dress.
The killer had rifled his wallet and stolen £200.
Rifleman. Rifleman.
Rifle range.
Rifle range.
Rift.
Rift.
Party officials have denied that there is any rift between ministers.
Today's announcement could lead to a further rift over public spending.
He set out to heal the rifts in the party.
Rift Valley.
Rift Valley.
Rig.
Rig.
Some international observers have claimed the election was rigged.
2 of the largest oil companies have been accused of rigging prices.
Some investors feel that the market is rigged.
The ship was fully rigged and ready to sail. Young children who are rigged out in designer clothes. We rigged up a simple shower at the back of the cabin.
We drove the rig down to Baltimore.
Rigmarole.
Rigmarole.
Rigatoni.
Rigatoni.
Rigging.
Rigging.
Right.
Right.
Yes, that's the right answer.
Is that the right time?
I got most of the questions right.
His ideas have now been proved right.
I think you're right. We should have set out earlier.
You were right about the hotel being too crowded.
I think the Prime Minister is only half right.
Am I right in thinking that you two have met before?
I think you've made the right decision. I think you've made the right decision.
I think she's definitely the right person for the job. A huge development like this isn't right for such a small village.
He had a knife in his right hand.
A scar on the right side of her face. Take the next right turn.
The right bank of the river.
The engine's not quite right.
This cheese doesn't smell right.
Things haven't been right between me and James for some time.
It didn't take long to find the fault and put it right.
Do you think I was right to report them to the police?
It can't be right to keep lying to your family.
I think it's right that the people who work hardest should earn the most.
It's only right that he should get his share of the money.
The company wants to do the right thing and offer compensation to all the injured workers.
I gather you work in the sales department. That's right. Some people find it very difficult to work quickly. That's right. Just blame me for everything, as usual.
He sounds like a right idiot. The house was in a right mess when we got back.
I haven't been feeling right all day.
A few days in bed will soon put you right.
You'll soon be as right as rain. Sonia's always careful to be seen with the right people.
Being a news photographer is all about being in the right place at the right time.
He was convinced of the rightness of his cause.
She was standing right in the middle of the room.
There's the house right in front of you.
I left my bags right here.
It's on right after the 6 o'clock news. I'll phone him right away. I could tell right off that something was wrong.
Kay answered right off the bat.
We guessed right. They'd gone.
I thought you'd be cross. You thought right.
Everything's going right for him at the moment.
It'll work out right in the end.
Turn right at the crossroads.
Do you need me right now?
We need to deal with this problem right now.
Do you need me right now?
We need to deal with this problem right now.
Go right to the end of the road.
We don't have to go right into town.
I slept soundly right through the night.
We're all right behind you.
Lunch is ready. I'll be right there.
Don't go away, I'll be right back.
He's definitely right up there with all the world-class footballers.
The company's losing money right, left and centre.
The new charter establishes the rights and duties of citizens.
Everyone should have the right to freedom of expression.
You have the right to consult a lawyer.
The money is yours by right.
You would be within your rights to sue the company for negligence.
I think you have a right to feel very disappointed.
You had every right to be angry with them.
You had no right to take money from my purse.
He has no right to speak to me like that.
Our car is just to the right of that white van. Take the first turning on the right.
The school is on your right as you come into the village.
The campaign is being supported by the right. The Conservative Party seems to be moving even further to the right.
Politicians on the extreme right.
Some kids don't seem to know the difference between right and wrong.
The protesters believe that they have right on their side. The studio bought the rights to his new book.
The company paid £2 million for film rights to the book.
The television rights to the Olympic Games.
Both sides are convinced that they're in the right. By rights, the house should be mine now.
She's a very wealthy woman in her own right.
It took ages to put the room to rights again.
I don't want to spend ages discussing the rights and wrongs of all this.
You need to be there by 10 o'clock. Right.
Right. Open your books on page 16. Right. Is everyone listening? Right. I think we're ready to go.
So we're meeting in the pub, right?
So I handed in the camera, right, and asked him to take our photograph.
He seems to think he can right all the wrongs of the world.
We must try to right the balance between taxation and government spending.
I finally managed to right the canoe.
She righted herself and picked up her bag.
Right angle.
Right angle.
Hold the brush at right angles to the surface.
A right-angled bend.
Right-angled triangle.
Right-angled triangle.
Right click.
Right click.
Right-click on the image to save it.
Righteous.
Righteous.
He was full of righteous indignation about the attack.
A righteous God.
Rightful.
Rightful.
George sat at the head of the table in his rightful place as their leader.
I return the money to its rightful owner.
The rightful heir to the throne.
I'm only claiming what is rightfully mine.
Right hand.
Right hand.
The right-hand side of the body.
The bottom right-hand corner of the page.
Right-handed.
Right-handed.
Right-hander.
Right-hander.
He was the only right-hander among his team's top 6 batsmen.
Right-hand man.
Right-hand man.
John is Bill's right-hand man and has put a lot of time into the team.
Right-hand drive.
Right-hand drive.
Right Honourable.
Right Honourable.
The Right Honourable Giles Williams MP.
Rightist.
Rightist.
Rightist demonstrators.
Rightly.
Rightly.
I was, as you rightly said, the smallest boy in the class.
As you so rightly pointed out, things are getting worse. They have been treated badly, and they are rightly upset.
There's a lot of talk, quite rightly, about the dangers of smoking.
This photo was taken in Paris, if I remember rightly.
The Prime Minister was widely judged, rightly or wrongly, to be an honest man.
A lot of people round here were furious, and rightly so.
Right-minded.
Right-minded.
All right-minded people will support us.
Right-o.
Right-o.
Righto, I'll see you at 6.
Right of appeal.
Right of appeal.
Right of centre.
Right of centre.
Right of way.
Right of way.
I never know who has right of way at this junction.
The law here says that pedestrians always have the right of way.
Walkers are often quite aggressive about their rights of way.
The path is not a public right of way.
Right on.
Right on.
It's one of those annoyingly right-on magazines about the environment.
Parker's column on teenage sexuality is right on. Power to the people. Yeah, right on.
Rights issue.
Rights issue.
Right size.
Right size.
They have been given 1 year to right-size their workforce.
Many workers lost their jobs as a result of right-sizing.
Right thinking.
Right thinking.
I condemn this killing, as all right-thinking people must.
Right to die.
Right to die.
The growing right to die lobby within the USA.
Right to life.
Right to life.
Every unborn child has a right to life.
Right triangle.
Right triangle.
Rightward.
Rightward.
A rightward glance.
Rightwards.
Rightwards.
The plane's course was veering rightwards.
Right wing.
Right wing.
Right-wing parties.
The organisation is very right-wing.
The right wing of the Conservative Party.
A prominent right-winger in the party.
Rigid.
Rigid.
Rigid and authoritarian methods of education.
Rigid adherence to old-fashioned ideas.
She maintained rigid control over her emotional and sexual life.
Rigid plastic. I heard a noise and woke up rigid with terror.
Rigidly opposed to all new ideas.
Rigmarole.
Rigmarole.
I don't want to go through the rigmarole of taking him to court.
Rigor.
Rigor.
Rigor mortis.
Rigor mortis.
Rigorous.
Rigorous.
A rigorous analysis of defence needs.
The rigorous standards required by the college.
Rigorous army training.
Rigor.
Rigor.
All the rigours of a Canadian winter.
The stresses and rigours of modern life. Their research seems to me to be lacking in rigour.
Rile.
Rile.
He was the calmest guy I ever knew. Nothing ever riled him.
The class gets me so riled up.
Rim.
Rim.
The rim of a glass. Plates with a gold band around the rim.
Gold-rimmed spectacles.
Red-rimmed eyes.
Rimless glasses.
His eyes were rimmed with fatigue.
Rhyme.
Rhyme.
Rind.
Rind.
Grated lemon rind. Ring.
Ring.
A diamond ring.
A plain silver ring.
A rubber ring for children to go swimming with.
Onion rings.
A key ring. She left a dirty ring around the bath.
A ring round the moon.
A ring of armed troops surrounded the building.
The city was overlooked by a ring of high-rise buildings.
I'll give you a ring later in the week.
A ring at the doorbell. Are you aware that a drugs ring is being operated in the club?
Secret files reveal an Oxford spy ring.
His explanation has the ring of truth.
His voice had a strangely familiar ring.
I'm sure you can run rings around him.
A gas ring.
He retired from the ring at 34.
I rang the doorbell, but no one came.
The sign said ring for service.
Instead of ringing for the maid, she made the tea herself. The bell rang for the end of break. I was going to ring you, but I don't have your number. Sally rang for a taxi. The phone hasn't stopped ringing all day.
The explosion made our ears ring.
The whole room rang with their laughter.
Her name rings a bell, but I can't remember her face.
It was a possible explanation, but it didn't quite ring true.
Choose a variety of foods and ring the changes with meals.
Assurances that things have changed ring hollow in many ears.
He left Washington with the president's praises ringing in his ears.
I'll ring back as soon as I find out anything. John rang, and he wants you to ring him back.
Jane's rung in to say she'll be late. He rang in sick every morning for a week. He rang in sick every morning for a week.
He rang off without giving his name.
The sound of a shot rang out.
I'll ring round to see whether anyone's interested in coming with us.
She rang round all the agencies.
I'll ring the manager up tomorrow. I rang up and made an appointment.
The cashier rang up £300 by mistake. Thousands of people ringed the court building to demand the release of Mr. Cox.
Her eyes were ringed with stiff black lashes.
Ring the mistakes in red.
Ring back.
Ring back.
Ring binder.
Ring binder.
Ringer.
Ringer.
Turn down the ringer on your phone.
Ring fence.
Ring fence.
OK, so this £20,000 is ring-fenced as the training budget.
Ring finger.
Ring finger.
Ringing.
Ringing.
She pronounced her final words in ringing tones.
A ringing endorsement of the proposals.
Ringleader.
Ringleader.
The ringleader of a new international drugs ring.
Ringlet.
Ringlet.
Ringmaster.
Ringmaster.
Ringpull.
Ring pull.
Ringroad.
Ring road.
Ringside.
Ringside.
Ringtone. Ringtone.
Ringworm.
Ringworm.
Rink.
Rink.
Rinse.
Rinse.
Let me just rinse my hands. Rinse the vegetables under a cold tap.
Don't forget to rinse out your swimsuit.
Leave the shampoo for 2 minutes, then rinse it off with warm water.
I rinsed the mud out under the tap.
The cream rinses off easily.
I gave my hands a quick rinse.
A blue rinse for grey hair.
Riot.
Riot.
Urban riots.
Prison riots. His murder triggered vicious race riots.
Police wearing riot gear.
Police in bulletproof vests and carrying riot shields.
Manufacturers have let their imaginations run riot to create new computer games.
Some people let their children run riot.
The garden is a riot of colour in spring.
If the kids don't settle down soon, I'll go up and read them the Riot Act.
University students rioted in protest at tuition fees.
Riotous.
Riotous.
A riotous party.
Their riotous behaviour led to their arrest. Riot police.
Riot police.
Riot police fired tear gas into the crowd.
R.I.P.
Rip.
Her clothes had all been ripped. The sails ripped under the force of the wind. Impatiently, Sue ripped the letter open. Jilly ripped out a sheet of paper from her notebook.
The buttons had been ripped off.
Jill's kitten is ripping our sofa to shreds.
I expected to have my argument ripped to shreds.
Fran took a slow, deep breath, then let rip, yelling and shouting at him.
Put your foot on the gas and let her rip.
He was ripped apart by savage beasts in the forest.
The agency really ripped us off.
Somebody had come in and ripped off the TV and stereo. A wave of bombings ripped through the capital's business district.
Sue ripped his photo up into tiny bits.
A green leather jacket with a rip in the sleeve.
Ripcord.
Ripcord.
Ripe.
Ripe.
Those tomatoes aren't ripe yet.
The police forces are ripe for reform. The former dock area is ripe for development. The time is ripe for a review of progress up to now. Eat less and exercise more if you want to live to a ripe old age.
She was put in charge at the ripe old age of 29.
We were pretty ripe after a week of walking. Ripen.
Ripen.
The apples were ripening on the trees.
Rip-off.
Rip-off.
The meal was a rip-off, and the service was appalling.
A rip-off of a hit movie.
Riposte.
Riposte.
A suitably witty riposte.
Ripple.
Ripple.
Fields of grain rippling in the soft wind.
I could see the muscles rippling under his shirt.
Panic rippled through Hollywood as the murders were discovered. Enthusiastic applause rippled around the tables. Anger was rippling through him so fiercely that his whole body shook.
The water rippled over the stones.
A rippling brook.
Ripples on the surface of the pond.
She dived into the pool, making scarcely a ripple.
A ripple of laughter ran through the audience.
A ripple of applause.
A ripple of excitement went through the crowd as he came on stage.
Ripples on the sand.
The increase had a ripple effect through the whole financial market.
Rip-roaring.
Rip-roaring.
Mickey had a rip-roaring time spending his first wage packet.
Rise.
Rise.
Sales rose by 20% over the Christmas period. The research budget rose from £175,000 in 1999 to £22.5 million in 2001. Temperatures rarely rise above freezing.
The number of people seeking asylum in Britain has risen sharply.
The divorce rate has risen steadily since the 1950s.
The country faces economic recession and rising unemployment.
The police seem unable to cope with the rising tide of car crime.
The floodwaters began to rise again. She watched the bubbles rise to the surface.
The problems caused by climate change and rising sea levels.
Smoke rose from the chimney. The road rises steeply from the village.
The waves rose and fell.
Then she picked up her bag and rose to leave. The chairman rose from his chair and came forward to greet her.
He rose to the rank of major.
He had swiftly risen to prominence during the 1950s.
Mussolini rose to power in Italy in 1922. People who rise to the top in their chosen professions. He rose to become chairman of the company.
She had joined the company as a secretary and risen through the ranks to become a senior sales director. The cliffs rose above them, huge rocks rising from the sea.
The bridge rose majestically into the air.
The sound of traffic rose from the street below.
Her voice rose above the shouts of the children.
His voice rose in frustration.
The sun rises in the east. She could sense her temper rising again. There was an atmosphere of rising excitement in the school.
The doctor sounded optimistic, and John's hopes rose.
A young athlete who can certainly rise to the occasion.
The team rose to the challenge.
They rose up and overthrew the government.
The prisoners rose against the guards and escaped.
They rose in rebellion against the king.
On the third day, Jesus rose from the dead.
The wind had risen again, and it was starting to rain.
The Rhine rises in Switzerland.
You expect a certain amount of criticism, but you have to rise above it. I try to rise above such prejudices.
You shouldn't rise to his comments. He refused to rise to the bait.
We are expecting a rise in interest rates.
An alarming rise in unemployment.
Profits went up to £24 million, a rise of 16%.
He's been promised a rise next year. The rail workers were offered a 3% pay rise.
The rise of fascism.
The rise of Napoleon.
Thatcher's rise to power in the late 70s.
The band's sudden rise to fame took everyone by surprise. His swift rise to prominence.
The rise and fall of the Roman Empire.
His speech gave rise to a bitter argument.
The president's absence has given rise to speculation about his health.
A sudden rise in sea levels.
She watched the steady rise and fall of his chest.
There's a slight rise in the road.
They topped the rise and began a slow descent towards the town.
She enjoys getting a rise out of you.
Riser.
Riser.
The school choir stood on risers behind the orchestra.
Risible.
Risible.
A risible suggestion.
Rising.
Rising.
Francesca was a rising star in the cinema.
The rising generation of students are optimistic about the future. The rising generation of students are optimistic about the future.
Rising damp.
Rising damp.
Risk.
Risk.
Skiers always face the risk of serious injury. There is a risk that the disease may spread further.
There is no risk to public health.
It was a risk sending a letter to my house.
Isn't he taking a bit of a risk in coming here?
I couldn't take the risk of leaving him alone even for a short time.
Polluted water supplies are a risk to public health.
Meat from the infected animals is regarded as a serious health risk.
The tyre dump is a major fire risk.
She's becoming a security risk.
We must stop these rumours. The firm's reputation is at risk. Women are more at risk from the harmful effects of alcohol than men.
Their children are also at high risk of developing the disease.
That would mean putting other children at risk.
Anyone travelling without a passport runs the risk of being arrested.
At the risk of sounding stupid, can I ask a question?
Will they go ahead with their plans, even at the risk of offending the Americans?
You can use it, but it's at your own risk.
All personal belongings are left at the owner's risk.
Drivers under 21 are regarded as poor risks by insurance companies.
When children start smoking, they don't realise that they're risking their health.
He's prepared to risk everything to avoid this war.
You'd be crazy to risk your money on an investment like that.
He risked his life helping others to escape.
I'm not going to risk my neck just to save a common criminal.
Why risk life and limb jumping out of a plane just to raise money for charity?
They may even risk losing their homes. He would prefer not to risk another embarrassing defeat.
Some people are prepared to risk imprisonment for what they believe.
Workers who broke the strike risked being attacked when they left the factory.
Are you prepared to risk travelling without an armed guard?
She risked a glance back over her shoulder.
You could slip out of school between classes, but I wouldn't risk it.